Well, what are ethics? Can you teach it? I don't know, can you? You can't teach someone to be ethical, but you can teach ethical behavior. And that's all we're going to talk about today. Try and educate, re-educate, reinforce, emphasize some concepts. We've got individual ethics and organizational ethics. And both of them really have to come together to make it properly work within an organization. And hopefully later on we get into some discussion. We can talk about maybe some situations that may have developed within your organizations, especially when we get to that ethics decision tree. I'd like to get some feedback from you here. But to kind of put this into perspective, I've got two articles here. One is what I call a real feel-good article. After we talk about it, you're going to feel real good. And that's this one. It's an interview with Cynthia Cooper. Anybody remember her name? WorldCom? She wrote a book, and this is kind of an excerpt from that book. It tells about the struggles she had within WorldCom and what went on. It was very, very interesting reading. Feel-good article. Then there's another article cut out of the paper a little while back. This will make you depressed if you haven't already read it. It's the Deloitte & Touche 2007 Teen Ethics Survey, taken at Junior Achievement. Let's talk about the good news here first. And I just want to give you the good and the bad of both of it. It's really what I'm trying to start off with here. Cynthia Cooper was the head of internal audit within WorldCom. And there's some excerpts in here that I want to read from that I think are really kind of relevant. This woman could have just turned away and not done anything and pretty much done what everybody else did within WorldCom. But she didn't. She stuck to her guns. And the very first sentence in the article says, "Don't ever allow yourself to be intimidated." She got that from her mother when she was a little girl, and she remembered it when she developed this situation at WorldCom, which made her persist through this. She says, faced with the decision of vigorously investigating suspicious transactions or looking away, Cynthia Cooper did the honorable thing and pursued the crimes to the end, but not without months of trepidation, a queasy stomach, and shaking hands. The more we investigated, the stranger the reactions from some of our colleagues became. No one would give us a straight answer. Here's the nutshell of what actually happened. When WorldCom reported that it would restate its financial statements by $3.8 billion related to improper capitalization of operating expenses, its stock price had fallen from a high of $64 in June 1989 to 83 cents. Now, we're all CPAs. We know the rules. We know what should be capitalized. Sometimes there's some judgment involved with what's repairs and maintenance, but what's capitalization. But $3.8 billion, it's a lot of bucks. On the wrong side of the balance sheet, it caused some problems. But it tried to be hid from everybody. But within that organization, she and her staff pursued a lot of obstacles, found the truth, and finally made it come out. Talks about a fellow who's now in jail, Scott Sullivan, the CFO, who at the time was revered as probably the most outstanding CFO in the country. WorldCom just grew and grew and grew over those years. He and Bernie Evers, the visionary of that company, who's also now behind bars. His behavior vacillated from being aggressive and hostile to trying to convince me that he had taken a close look at the situation and that the allowance was appropriate. At one point, he tracked me down outside of the office and chastised me for asking Arthur Anderson about the allowance. As an auditor, when someone is hostile or acting in a way that is out of character, you should ask yourself why. The controller later testified in federal court that he had intentionally cut my team's system's access to try and keep us from finding the fraudulent accounting entries. And there's a few other comments in here about after it was all exposed, what the people had done to try and keep them from getting the information that they needed to. And then there's this phrase that I picked up several years ago. First time I saw it was in the Yellow Book. I kind of liked it. Now everybody uses it. It's called tone at the top. She said, I've come to appreciate more than ever the impact the tone at the top can have on an organization. And then as far as how she felt during this whole thing, she says, I wish I could tell you that I was a pillar of strength throughout this process, but I wasn't. There were times when I was scared, when my hands were shaking and my heart was pounding. So there's a woman who did the ethical thing. She followed it through, and all hell broke loose.